In this case, I've got one of the hippest, coolest cameras in the entire world. It's fashionable, it's small, it's beautiful. Well, hey everybody, thank you for checking in once again and welcome to another video. I've been shopping recently and I've been into some charity shops, that is thrift stores in the USA, and I didn't expect to find very much. Most charity shops are pretty canny, pretty knowledgeable nowadays about what the worth of various cameras is. So it's not like, say, 5 or 10 years ago where you can walk into one of these shops and pick up a bargain, except sometimes you still can. And to prove it, I bought these two wonderful Olympus cameras for £5 each. These cameras were in the bargain bin bucket thing. Nobody wanted them. This is one of the wonderful cameras, but I'm not going to tell you what this one is just yet. Instead, this week we're going to concentrate on this one. They are, as I say, both Olympus cameras, and let's have a look what we found in here. And I was astonished to find in the £5 bucket one of these. Oh, upside down. It's an MJU2 or a MU2, and these cameras are now really expensive and really sought after. They were just a fairly ordinary point and shoot of the 1990s. It's got a clamshell cover design that was very popular with the Olympus cameras of the time. It's got a nice f2.8 35mm lens, so that's nice. But this camera has now achieved cult status, and good copies regularly go for £300 or more. That's around about $350, $400 or more, something of that sort. And the very rarest, the maroon covered coloured cameras, they can go for up to £700. I guess that's around about $800 or $900 or you know, thereabouts. So this is a very expensive camera. It's a very, very popular camera, and today we're going to look at it and we're going to ask what makes it so expensive and so sought after when many other point and shoot cameras from the same time exist. So here's the camera close up, and you can see that it's a very, very small thing. It will fit in my hand very easily with quite a lot of room to spare, and there are people with far bigger hands than I, so that gives you an idea of how small this camera really is. It really will fit into pretty much any pocket, certainly into a bag or any other thing that you're carrying with you. On the back, well, there we are, ultra compact 35mm camera, it says on there, and I guess that is indeed accurate because it is a very, very compact camera. And in fact, I don't know any other point and shoot that is as small as this one. And also, in fact, I don't know any other 35mm camera that's as small as this one. I'm sure they exist, but they must be fairly rare and few and far between. You don't come across them very often, and this is the smallest one that I've seen. I don't know of any smaller. So it's really got that on its side. It is a beautiful little design. It's very, very simple and easy to use. You can use this camera with one hand. So you take it out of your pocket, open it up and press the button, bang. That's on the top there. It's got this strange oval shutter button here. I've never seen one of that shape. It's got a half press and a full press, but it's quite large, and it does mean that you're not going to miss it. You're always going to find that shutter button, and it's never going to be a case of moving your finger around the deck to try and find it, as it is with occasionally with some other cameras. It's got a flash built in, as most of these point and shoots did. What else? Let's have a brief look inside. There's the inside nothing really extraordinary there. It's DX coded as all the later, you can see the contacts there for the DX coding, so it can automatically recognize film speed. All of the later film cameras had that feature, SLRs, point and shoots, you know, and all other kinds. That was a fairly standard technology at the time. This one's in pretty nice condition. You can see it's got one or two tiny little marks on the corners, the areas most likely to pick up wear and tear, but all things considered, I'd say this camera is aging pretty well for its 30 years. I've not actually put a battery in it and tested it yet, so this might all come to grief. I'm going to make an episode where I use this camera and look at the results. I think this one will work. It seems to have been nicely kept. You never can tell, but I am expecting this one to work. Right, let's look at the features that actually that this camera actually has, and maybe we can think of perhaps why it's so expensive and such a cult camera. And we can also suggest, I'll also suggest a couple of alternatives to this camera that are less expensive and may or may not be better depending on your requirements. So let's have a look. I'm going to go for the advantages first, because this camera does have a lot of advantages over many other point and shoots. And the first advantage is very obvious when we slide open the cover, and that is the f2.8 lens. Most other point and shoots have at best a 3.5 lens. Some have a zoom lens, and that's really limited. Sometimes that goes down to f4, f5, 6 at the long end. Sometimes it even goes down to f9 at the long end, depending on which model you've got. So this is a really wide point and shoot camera, wide aperture point and shoot camera, as point and shoot cameras go. It has a 35mm lens, and 35mm lenses are very, very popular on full frame, on film. 35mm is, of course, a little wider than 50, and it allows you to make a wide shot. Personally, I would prefer a 40mm lens, but I know there are a lot of people like 35mm lenses, and this one offers it right out of the box. With these cameras, there's no mucking about to find yourself a lens that will work, or worrying about your favourite lens, which one gives the best colour balance, any of that. You've just got one lens, and it's actually a really nice one. It's a Zuiko lens. I think it's a Zuiko lens anyway. It doesn't actually say it on there, but I'm pretty sure that I've read somewhere that this is a Zuiko lens. So that's a nice feature, and even if it isn't, it is a really nice lens, as we'll see when I actually go out and use this. But as well as that, it's got lots of other advantages. This camera has 400 focus points. That, I believe, is correct. Do correct me if I'm wrong, but I understand it has 400 focus points. That is points for the autofocus to focus at, and that's a lot more, so I'm given to understand, than most point and shoots can offer. I believe that the Contax, is it the T2 or the Yashica T4, I believe that those have only 160 focus points, so this one really beats them hands down in that department. So it's got a lot of autofocus points, so it should find a point, it's almost certain to find a point at which your subject is focused. So that's a nice technical quality. It has off the film metering, which was pretty advanced for the time, and it gives a much more accurate reading than any other kind of metering. So a very accurate exposure meter. This camera, I mentioned earlier, it has DX coding. Well, this camera can read film speeds off that DX coding up to 3200 ISO. Now that's really, really fast. That's astonishingly fast film. Back in the film days, Very rarely would people go above 400 ISO, sometimes to 800, but that was more often professional photographers who would do that. Domestic, casual photographers usually didn't do that. This one can, if you wish, take 3200 ISO film, so you can go off to a concert or party at your mates or whatever it is, and you can be relatively sure, if you use the flash and that very high speed film 3200 ISO, you can be pretty sure of getting a shot that's correctly exposed. So that's a massive advantage that this camera has that others don't have. The Nikon L35AF, that's a point and shoot I really like. My version of that only goes up to 400 ISO. There is a version that goes up to 1000 ISO. Most point and shoots, as I understand it, don't go much beyond that. This one goes way over. It has a spot meter mode, so you can accurately meter for your subject. On the back here is a little button somewhere that gives you a spot meter mode, or maybe it's on the top, I'm not sure, but it does have the ability to do that. So what that means is that your subject is fairly likely to be correctly exposed. So that's quite advanced tech, I think, for the time, and certainly pretty advanced tech for a point and shoot. It's a tiny thing, of course, that makes it really, really practical. You can just stick it in your pocket. Personally, I wouldn't do that. Certainly not if I paid 300 quid for one. Even with this one that I've only paid a fiver for, I wouldn't stick it in my pocket because it's going to get all scratched up and that. But get yourself a cover and you can. It's very, very small, very, very practical. You can operate it with one hand, I've already mentioned that, so that's nice and easy. And this camera is currently very, very, very cool and fashionable, if that matters to you. I know it does matter to some people, to others it doesn't matter. Many photographers would simply say, well, it just doesn't matter whether it's cool or fashionable. What matters is the shot. But you might not be one of those photographers. You might be a photographer who wants the coolest, most fashionable, most hip thing. You might be a photographer who, as well as enjoying the art of photography, also appreciates the hip factor that these old cameras can lend. And there is a hip factor to them. And this one is the hippest of the hip. So if that's important to you, this one has it. Okay, let's look at some disadvantages of this little camera, this lovely little camera. The more I hold it, the more I'm warming to it, actually. It is a beautiful little thing. And these were sold in the millions, and I'm really not surprised because it is a lovely little camera and a pretty capable one as well. But let's have a look at some disadvantages. Okay, the first of those I would say is the cost of this camera. It's, you know, way too expensive. It's far, far, far more expensive than it should be. When these cameras were new, this one won't have cost anything like that. It won't have had anything like the inflated value that it does now over and above other point and shoots. I'm not sure what it cost when it was new, but I'll find out if I can. But this camera now to buy is very, very expensive, and you know, you could buy 3 nice points. If you're paying 300 quid for this camera, you could buy 3 equally capable point and shoots from other manufacturers for that same money. So it is expensive, and you might not want to lay out all that cash on a plastic fantastic like this, because it is a plastic fantastic. It's made of plastic. It's a point and shoot. This was a camera for, you know, just everybody to use. So you might not want to spend that huge amount of money on one, and you might not be prepared to risk a huge amount of money on one, because this is quite a technological wonder. It's got lots of electronics in it. It's got lots of tiny weeny little parts in it that will eventually go wrong. So you don't know, if you buy one of these, you don't know whether it's going to last, and your money's going to go down the plug hole. So expense is one drawback. The flash is always on this camera. If you turn it off like that and then turn it on again, the flash comes on automatically, and if it thinks that the light is low enough, it will fire. Now, I really don't like that feature. There is a button on the back here to turn the flash off, and I've used these cameras in the past, and I have always found it rather irksome that every time you turn the blooming thing on, you've got to turn the flash off. And of course, sometimes I forget, and occasionally that's ruined a shot, and that is a disadvantage, and it comes from the fact that this is a consumer camera made for people who, you know, weren't au fait with the technicalities of photography and weren't too sure when a flash might be needed, when it might not be needed. So this being an auto everything camera, it was ready to flash whenever it thought it needed it. That, I think, is a drawback for today's user. Sometimes this camera has the reputation of missing focus, and it can miss focus despite those 400 focus points. And importantly, there is no way of knowing where you're focused. If you are shooting an image of your friend over here, and your friend is here, and there's something in the background over there, you don't know if the camera has focused on your friend or on the background. You won't know that until you get your pictures, your images back, until you develop them. There are other cameras. The Nikon L35AF has a little needle in the viewfinder, and it's brilliant. It tells you whether it's focused middle, near or far, and it's a really, really, really good system, and it saved me missing shots on several occasions. I'll see that actually I've focused on the background, so I'll let go, refocus until I find that it's focused on the distance that I want it to focus on. With this camera you can't do that, and that is a drawback. You don't know if it's focused properly until you get your images back from developing. What else have we got? It is just a point and shoot. That's all you're getting for your £300 or $400 or however many hundreds you've decided to drop on one of these admittedly lovely little machines. It is just a point and shoot. That's all you've got. You've got no adjustments. You've got no ability to change lenses. At the end of the day, you don't have the refinement and quite the quality image that an SLR, for example, or a rangefinder would give you. It is just a point and shoot, and there are many, many excellent fully featured SLRs or rangefinders with lenses that you could buy for £300, the cost of this camera. So there is that to consider. If you just want to make images rather than a fashion statement, I don't know, is this the best way to do it? I'm really not sure. Finally, I can't help thinking, if this really is just a point and shoot, which it really is, isn't a phone camera a better tool for shooting in the dark, shooting at parties, shooting at events, concerts, wherever else you might want to shoot this lovely old thing? Isn't a phone camera better? It's going to work better, it's going to get a better shot, it's going to work time after time after time after time after time. You know what you've shot before, rather as soon as you've shot it, which you don't with this one. You've no way of knowing if you focus properly. Maybe a phone camera is the better tool. So that, I think, is a serious consideration. So should you buy one? Well, I don't know, that's your decision. Many people will buy these cameras because they love them, because they're very capable, and sometimes just because they're fashionable. So people will continue to buy these cameras, but should you buy one? Well, I don't know. If you just want to point and shoot, there are better options out there. The Nikon L35AF is a better camera than this, unless you want to shoot at 3200 ISO, which the Nikon won't do. The Nikon is a better camera than this one. You can put a filter on it. It's got that lovely distance meter so you can tell where you're focused. And it's got that lovely Nikon 38mm lens, I think, on it, which is a bit nearer to my ideal focal length of 40mm. So there are better point and shoots. And at the end of the day, you could just use your phone. that would be probably a better tool for a lot of the kinds of shots that people shoot with this. But a phone doesn't use film and this does, and of course that is rather important. That's an important difference. If you want a film camera that can see in the dark, that is really portable, that is really fashionable and is very capable in its own right, I don't mean to knock this camera, it's a very, very capable point and shoot, then maybe you should get one, because these are good cameras, they're capable cameras, they're able cameras, and they're very nice and charming little cameras too. Personally, I really wouldn't pay £300 for one, and it may be that you would, but I would advise you to check your local charity shops first, because you never know what bargains you might find. So I think that is probably it from me for now, ladies and gents. Many, many thanks for watching. I do appreciate you tuning in. If you've enjoyed this episode, why not chuck us a sub? That would be appreciated also. Many, many thanks go to subscribers for your support. That is a sincere thanks to you. And many, many thanks go to patrons for your support. That is a very sincere and heartfelt thanks to you also. Thank you to everybody who's given thanks, who's given super thanks, who's tuned in, who's watched, who's enjoyed, who's engaged with the channel in any way. Thank you. I really do appreciate it all. I'll be back soon with another episode of Xenography, and if you're not doing anything too irksome, annoying, or what shall we say, difficult next week at around this time, please do join in for a spot more Xenography. Cheerio all.